What is going on, YouTube? It is the Dual Threat Podcast here, your daily news source for all things sports. My name is Drew. I got the merch going here, and this is my co-host.
Yes, sir, Jacob. How we doing, everybody? Today we're gonna be giving some predictions of some college football games this weekend, boys. Because that's what we do around here. All things sports, but when college football is on, it's all things college football. So let's get right into it.
I agree. If y'all would know, if you watched last week, we actually both went 2-0 here. We both predicted that Alabama would win and cover. That did happen. We both predicted that Kansas would win, and that happened as well. Moving on to this week. We've got two pretty good games on the schedule here. Unfortunately, we thought maybe we wouldn't overload with Kansas again, even though that is the game day game this week. But we've got a few good ones here for you. So we're going to start out with Tennessee and LSU this weekend in Death Valley at 11 a.m. Tennessee is a 2.5 point favorite. That line is moving between 2.5 and 3 as we speak. The total is 64. Jacob, why don't you start us off with that game?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Tennessee LSU at LSU. Listen, now they're both ranked teams. LSU barely cracking the top 25 at that last spot. Tennessee up in the top 10. If you watched our rankings video yesterday, Tennessee is a solid, very, very solid looking team. They're putting up 48 and a half points a game, which is absolutely ridiculous in the SEC. Their offense has been pretty out of control. Drew, if you want to go ahead and put me on the bulletin board, and I'll show you all a couple stats
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
about their team. Um, Listen, their offense has been elite. I mean, Hendon Hooker, all they have to do is beat one of Alabama or Georgia, and he's probably one of the favorites for the Heisman. I mean, the man can flat out ball. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. 1,200 passing yards, eight passing touchdowns, excuse me, with another 175 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns on the floor. I mean, the man can ball. And it's not just him. I mean, they got other guys. They got a couple solid running backs, Jalen Wright and Jabari Smith. Jabari Small. I can't read. That solid, averaging over 4 yards a carry. I mean, they're not doing crazy things, but they're doing what needs to be done. And their receivers, man, they got some solid receivers. 3 guys with over 200 yards, averaging 14 to 16 a reception, and they are all scoring 6 total touchdowns between them. I mean, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Their total stats might not be the highest, but they've only played 4 games, while most of these other teams have played 5. And they have looked dominant, dominated Ball State, beat Pitt, who now doesn't seem to be so great, destroyed Akron, and beat a very solid Florida team. That game, the actual score was closer than it actually was. Florida scored late. They pretty much dominated that game too. And I hate to break it to all the LSU fans, I think Tennessee's going to come in and cover. I know it's only 2.5 points. I think it's going to be more like a 7 to 10 point game. I just, I don't know. I think LSU's good. Listen, LSU, Drew, you can take me off the bulletin board if you want. I think this is a prove it week for LSU. They've looked good recently against some pretty bad teams. The Mississippi State win is solid, don't get me wrong, but I think this is where LSU's got to prove whether they can compete or not with the really top SEC teams this year, because there's not that many of them. But in the past, we've had, it seems like 4, 5, 6 in the, like, there's been Georgia and Alabama head and shoulders above everybody else, but a couple teams that are up there. And this year, it kind of seems like, I don't know, it seems like other than kind of on their side of the SEC, really other than Ole Miss, like it's Alabama and then nobody else. And then on the other side, it feels like Tennessee and Georgia's all they got. So this is a prove a game for LSU. Have they actually been good recently, or just have they been kind of opportunistic and played some bad teams? We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But yeah, I'm predicting a 7 to 10 point game, maybe along the lines of like 42, 42, 32, 42, 35 kind of range. Yeah. So that's what I'm going with, Drew. What do you think about the game?
So we know that Jaden Daniels is back for this game, but I think the problem will be LSU's secondary. We know that Tennessee can throw the ball, as Jacob talked about on the bulletin board earlier. They have looked very elite in that aspect, and LSU's secondary has been just depleted. They have had so many injuries. Last game, their star safety got hurt as well, and I think that's going to really show in this game. I think LSU will lose, and I think Tennessee will cover. This will bring to Brian Kelly's first SEC loss, and I think it'll be a pretty big one. I'm predicting 35-21. I feel like that's kind of where I see this game going. I think Tennessee, it'll probably be 35-14, and then Tennessee will score one late. But that's just kind of my prediction there. Uh, Next up, in our next game, we've got Texas OU. This is the Red River rivalry, Red River shootout. Wherever you're from, there's a different name. We're going with this game. Texas is favored by 7. Believe it or not, this is the first time that has been the case since 2009, ladies and gentlemen. That just shows how bad Texas has been these last few years, but it also shows how dominant OU has been in the Big 12. Another statistic you need to know is this is the first time neither team has been ranked since 1998. And so we feel like the media is not going to talk about it as much, but we still think it's kind of an important game, as I think Texas or OU could very still run the table and win the Big 12, because I think it's just kind of wide open in that aspect. So I'm actually going to go the bulletin board on this one. All right, so looking at the bulletin board here for Texas, you can see that Hudson Card has not even played that bad for being a backup this year. I mean, he is one of the better backups in the country, in my opinion. Um, He's had a 70% completion rate, which as pretty much every big time college football fan knows, that Steve Sarkisian's best thing about him is that he can get receivers open very easily, and especially with the loaded receiver core that they have, it's just phenomenal. Xavier Worthy finally started to show like the Xavier Worthy of last year. Played phenomenal against West Virginia. Granted, that's not the best team, but it's starting to look like Xavier Worthy's getting back into the rhythm. I mean, we saw a couple of drop touchdowns against Alabama and Texas Tech. He didn't play that great, but Xavier Worthy, he is now the leading receiving in yards. He's got 3 touchdowns on the year. Jordan Whittington has also kind of exploded as a great wide receiver in that group. He's already got 250 yards. This group mixed with Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, who I think is probably the most underrated player on this team. Look, they have a great offense, and especially because reports are starting to say that Quinn Ewers may be back for this game. We saw how he was against Alabama. I mean, you can just look at, just simple out routes that he was able to hit that probably no other true freshman in the country would be able to hit. I mean, he would throw it when they're not, Xavier Worthy's not even running towards the sideline yet. And that's the kind of thing that you usually have to teach over a couple of years, but that's something that Quinn Ewers looks to be like he picked up already. And so you can also see that he goes through progressions really well. If he needs to hit down a check down person, he can. But normally with, Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington, that's not normally the case because of how fast they are and they're able to get by those safeties in the corners. So with all of this said, mixed with Oklahoma playing horribly last week, let's go back to the normal board here. I'm predicting a Texas win. Normally, if this was a regular game, I would say Texas should blow this team out. But it seems like every single year these two teams play, no matter how good these teams are, if you look at 2018 when Oklahoma was, or 2019, I'm trying to remember which year it was, when Oklahoma was clearly the better team and Texas, won like last year as well. Texas finished 5-7 on the year, but this game came down to, the last minute of the game. I'm predicting a Texas win here. I don't know if they even cover here, to be honest with you. But I will tell you one thing, and I'm pretty sure we're going to put this on our Friday night line, so maybe look for this. I'm loving the over for this game at 65. Every single year, it has, at minimum, been like 45-42 or something. I mean, it's crazy. This game is called a Red River Shootout for a reason, and so I think that that over will hit. I am predicting, like I said, a 45-42 win for Texas. I think it's not going to be like Oklahoma's driving down the field to possibly kick a field goal and Texas's defense wins it, but I think it's going to be like 45-35, and then Oklahoma scores a touchdown and has to kick an onside kick. They don't get it, and the game's over. That's my prediction. Jacob, who do you got in this game?
Yeah, this one I kind of have mixed feelings about it because Hudson Card has looked solid. The problem with Hudson Card has been the plays that he misses because he can make almost any throw on the field, make almost any play on the field, but he also, you watch the West Virginia game, Worthy's wide open and he overthrows him, or he underthrows him and the ball almost gets picked and it just lands in Worthy's lap in the end zone. It feels like he's a little bit less consistent, especially on the big plays. And historically against Oklahoma, you can't have those miscues. Now, if Quinn Ewers plays, I think that all goes out the window, and Texas could legitimately dominate this game. If our reports are true that we've been hearing, I don't think I think the range of outcomes are a Texas blowout or a close game to even like OU winning barely, purely because of this game, like you mentioned. 7 points is a giant spread for this game. 2018, when they had Kyler Murray, they were 7.5 point favorites, and Texas obviously won that game by 3 points. The year before, when they had Baker, they were 7 point favorites and they won by 5. So it it just seems logical to take OU with the points just based on how this game always goes, no matter how bad one of the teams is. But OU looks horrible right now. I mean, it's not even like I don't even know what to say, really. Granted, Dylan Gabriel got knocked out, but not knocked out, literally got knocked out of the game. Um, but we're not even sure if he's going to play yet this weekend. So if he doesn't play and Quinn Ewers does, I mean, this game could be legitimately like a 21 point game, not even close, just a beat down. So we'll see how it ends up being. I'm with you. I think no matter what happens, Texas is. I lean Texas. I think it's going to be close, just purely because kind of what I mentioned. It's almost always close. That it's been for the last like 10 meetings, it's been single digits every time except for one. Um, 2012 was the last blowout they had. It was 63-21 OU, but I don't think we're going to get a 40 point game. I think realistically it's going to be in the, if Texas wins, it's probably going to be in the like 7-10 range. And if OU somehow pulls it off, it'll be by like 1 or 2 points. So I'm going also a high scoring game. I'm probably a little bit lower than you, but I'm still in the range of like 45-38 Texas. I think 7 is actually a pretty good line just because kind of what we've mentioned, this game's always close, but yeah, I think it's going to be close on the scoreboard, not really close in how the game plays out. Like you said, I think it's going to be 7 points, but OU maybe gets a late touchdown to bring it up and then doesn't get the onside kick kind of thing. So I'm going 43-28, or sorry, 45-38. Wow, that didn't even make sense. But yeah, so that's what I'm going with. Texas win, and maybe they're able to right the ship. Granted, it would be hard for them to still put together a championship contending season, but if they beat Oklahoma and they are able to kind of go win the Big 12, they could definitely get like a Sugar Bowl appearance if that's not one of the playoff games, which it probably is. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my take on my prediction for this game. Yeah.
Hey, and listen, if you are a Longhorn fan, we do have it written how your team can still make the playoffs this year. They looked great against West Virginia. If they continue to look that good throughout the year, who knows? Go make sure to check out that video and look like back to what we were talking about with OU being favored since 2009. The game has always been close except for one blowout. We have not seen when Texas is favored in this game. It's going to be interesting to see for the first time in over a decade how Texas handles being the favorite in a huge rivalry game. And so we're looking forward to it. And thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe. Jacob, do you got anything else for us?
I think that's it. Make sure to check out our video from yesterday, and we got a couple more videos this week before we come out with Friday Night Lines this weekend for to hopefully get some redemption from last week because that was pretty brutal. But yeah, I think that's it for me, Drew.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. Comment below if you disagree, if you think somebody else is going to win. If you think, maybe the game's going to be a lot closer or a lot more of a blowout, let us know. We'd love to chat with y'all, and, we love hearing y'all's takes. It's a lot of fun for us getting to, talk back and forth, but we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and see y'all later.